Unlearning proposes that new ways of learning can only be acquired when individuals unlearn those thoughts, those emotions, and those behaviors that prevent us from fully flourishing in the world.
2 weeks into this course, my heart already knew that my entire viewpoint on humanity was going to change.
During the years that I've worked with Taryn, she has assisted me in seeing the potential as an individual, and the course has changed my life for the better. I am the person that I am today because of the course that I enrolled for.
I've been lecturing the content for 7 years, and every year I am in awe of students who share how the content has transformed them both academically and personally. I believe that the world right now is in desperate need of an education that equips individuals with both academic and personal development skills.
Before this course happened, I used to hate people from the bottom of my soul. But after this course, for the first time in my life, I can say that I no longer hate people. I can finally say that I no longer see people for their circumstances, but rather for who they are as people and who they can become.
The things that I learned in my early childhood about who I was not and who I was supposed to be. However, the course showed me the true identity of myself. It showed me that it was okay to be vulnerable. It showed me that it was okay to heal. And throughout the course, I have grown tremendously.
And the unlearning course does that. I realized that the content was so powerfully transformative that it would be irresponsible, that it would be selfish for me not to share it with the world. Unlearning is really a course that I've been lecturing for 7 years, but I've made it bigger, I've made it better, and I'm excited to incorporate the performing arts. I do not believe that unlearning needs to be clinical and boring. We can also make unlearning entertaining and fun.
To anyone that would want to enroll in this course, it will not only benefit you academically, but also individually. It will assist you in presenting yourself as the true individual that you are, but it will also assist you in healing and journeying the life process.
This course was the missing puzzle piece that I needed in my journey of self-transformation and self-discovery. And most of all, this course taught me how to unlearn this toxic behavior and how to choose happiness and positivity in the present and to stop worrying about tomorrow.
The gift of this course is that it is universally applicable to any personal and professional context. Cornerstone, learn to change the world.
In this time of great uncertainty, there's one thing you can be certain of: your education. Our wide range of online programs lets you upskill yourself and earn a leading-edge qualification from the comfort of your own home. We've been educating Africa for 50 years, so we know how to adapt to our forever changing landscape. Learn to change the world and take control today. Speak to one of our student advisors. Visit cornerstone.ac.za to enroll now.
Ngizokuhleka 1 hour 2 to 5 kushesha i-empower isweko sensai istyle simple intelligence AI boys abaks mgengani mawilisi intenjani ay siphethe uphondo luka bejani Nale punchline bawan makaset brawa mfitho pani njaya manu ngani yam kukan mamas I'm best now yes I shoba wow
Bush Radio 89.5 FM.
Hi, you're listening to the Cornerstone Critical Dialogues, a partnership between Bush Radio and Cornerstone Institute, a non-profit private institute of higher learning in Cape Town. For the past 4 years, more than 100 of South Africa's top thinkers, intellectuals, and social activists have shared their thoughts and insights with Cornerstone audiences about how to overcome some of our toughest social, economic, and political challenges. They've looked at issues such as gender-based violence, urban food security, and the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. These debates are now coming to you via this 2-hour radio show, as well as streaming via Facebook and YouTube. It will also be edited into a 1-hour podcast for listening at your convenience. Hosted by veteran journalist Ryan Fortune, it will see a rotating lineup of guests, speaking on topics such as community health and wellness, the state of African book publishing, the viability of a basic income grant in South Africa, policing and gangsterism on the Cape Flats, contemporary Khoisan conflicts, the pitfalls and opportunities in the current state of the internet, and much, much more. We hope you enjoy these discussions and encourage you to call in with your thoughts, ideas, questions, and solutions at Bush Radio on 021 448 3277 or message us on Bush Radio WhatsApp at 061 862 1065. If you're watching our live stream on Cornerstone's Facebook page or YouTube channel, please feel free to leave your comments there.
Yes, welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to the Cornerstone Critical Dialogues, episode 7. It's another Thursday evening, and we are doing what we've been doing every Thursday for the past 7 weeks, looking at a particular topic that is of great public concern. You may not know it, but once we start talking about it, you'll understand that these are some of the most critical dialogues that we could be having at this time in our society. I'm your host, Ryan Fortune, as I said, and we are this evening going to be talking about the issue of waste and its management, waste and what to do about it. We're going to be shining a spotlight on this very topical issue. We live in dire times sometimes when we look at the state of the environment. We've got climate change, we've got so many issues. But something that we can actually do something about is the waste we produce. And in the studio this evening with me, I have two people who are very engaged in the space. You're going to be hearing from them. And they are right here with me. Yes, on my left is Ashley Deploy. the cameras on him, Ashley Deploy, who is the CEO of the E-Waste Recycling Authority. Ashley has been on a long journey to assist in the formation of this body, which is going to be dealing in the space of electronic waste, which is a huge, huge problem. He's going to be telling us a bit more about how big the problem actually is and why the necessity for a body like the E-Waste Recycling Authority. Ashley, hi there.
Hi, Ryan.
Just hold on. Sorry. Hi there again.
Hi, thanks.
And then in the middle, in front of me, is Emile Fourie, who is a committee member on the Organics Recycling Association of South Africa, or RASA. He's going to be telling us a bit about the big problem of organic waste. We throw our organic waste into landfills mostly at this point. Most of it ends up there. The huge percentages of it, we don't even think about it, but this very valuable commodity that we just leave to rot in the landfills and producing all kinds of toxins for the environment, when it could actually be turned into something far more valuable. And on my right is Nina Lowe. She's a lecturer, an adjunct lecturer at Cornerstone Institute, which is behind this initiative, the partner with Bush Radio. And she is also going to be assisting me in the asking of some of the questions. Good evening, Nina.
Hi there.
Hi there. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Yes, so to start off with, I think we sort of want to lay the groundwork for what we are talking about today. So listeners, if you are not aware, and I think most people are not aware of how big the problem actually is, because waste is something that we put it into the bin, we put it out on the pavement. Someone comes and takes it away. We don't have to think about it too much. But tonight we are going to think about it. We're going to apply our minds. We're going to hear some facts and figures. We're going to see what's being done about this problem that we all actually have to be concerned about. And also we're going to be hearing about the economic opportunities that exist within this space. That could actually help with our problems of unemployment, particularly among youth and women and the disabled. Huge opportunities in the space for new businesses, and so that's it. And I hope you listen and take heed and take notes and actually become part of this conversation, which we should all be having more often. Ashley, I think let's start with you. Tell us a bit about this journey that you've been on with e-waste, setting up this body.
Okay. Well, excuse me, the journey started I would say formally in October 2014, when the Department of Environmental Affairs called producers of electronics and recyclers of electronic waste to a meeting to say that government intended to implement extended producer responsibility. What that means is that the producers of electronics and electrical equipment must take responsibility for how that equipment is treated at its end of life. So the challenge was put to the sector, and out of that consultative conference, about 120 delegates, a committee was established to work through what a national industry waste management plan would look like for the sector. And for my sins, I got put in the chair, and we've had participation from both recyclers and producers of electronics. And in a way, they have a similar interest, but also a divergent interest in that the one party, the producers, are expected to pay for the extraction and recycling and compliant management of the waste. And on the other hand, the recyclers are expecting to get as much as they can for managing that recycling. So it's been quite a ride, and I think we're quite proud in ERA that we've been able to keep those parties in the room for 7 years. It was difficult at times. And the Section 28 framework, which the Department of Environmental Affairs initially presented as the framework within which this plan must be produced, essentially said that government would collect a levy on all electronics, and that levy would then be applied to the recycling of end-of-life electronic and electrical equipment. But that has changed since. So in that model, the funds would have gone into Treasury, and with no guarantees of any funds being ring-fenced or committed to this particular task. And we have been working with the Department of Environmental Affairs for the better part of 2021 and 2020 to help shape what they call a Section 18 framework, where the producers take responsibility for the management of the electronic waste. And that's how ERA came into being, as a producer responsibility organization for electronics producers. And our role really is to be a committed institution to manage the relationship between the producers and the recyclers.
Thanks, Ashley. Emil, you are on the other side of, well, it's the same industry, except you're dealing with organics. Can you tell us a bit about Orasa and where it began and why?
So, interestingly, slightly different to how the new extended producer responsibility organizations have been formed. Orasa was driven through industry and through industries of waste beneficiators. And what we looked at as industry was that there was limitations to growth and development within the sector, and we were sort of forced and restricted in how we could expand and how we could operate. And the critical issue we were facing as industry was that the lack of an enabling environment. And that was our primary objective. We looked at discussions around banning organic waste and favorable legislation. It was moving very slowly. And we knew that we had to actually mobilize industry to try and push this forward a lot more aggressively. So finally, I don't think organics has a seat at the extended producer responsibility. And it's just something that's come to me now, where I was sitting, I was like, wow, we are actually the only industry that is slightly separate to all other types of waste. And there are a lot of uniqueness, characteristics to this industry. We charge a gate fee, we charge processing fees, all the necessary fees that you would need to operate and to be able to actually provide the service. We've remained something that is charged for, which is very interesting, which I'd actually like to continue chatting about. And that's where we started. So we formalized we started meeting in 2015, 2016. We launched 2017, and we've got a national footprint now where we're really affecting legislation. We are creating an enabling environment. We're affecting draft norms and standards, and we really are pushing so that this industry can grow and develop into the potential that it has.
Nina, you are at Cornerstone with an interest. You're a business lecturer, and your interest is in sustainability. What are the roots of that interest?
So I think sustainability, always at the moment, I feel it's a bit of a buzzword. So maybe to go into why that, I think in terms of business, and actually the creation of something, the creation of value or of a product, we need to think through the system. So we need to think circularly through the system. And when I say that, we need to think about when we design something, that we need to think about the second life or the third life. So trying to reduce waste, whilst knowing at the moment we do have waste. So what can we do with waste in order to create new value and to give new life to waste? So and actually when I listen to the different stories, it immediately what jumps to mind is this thing that when we think about waste at the moment, we've got the producer side of it. So within production, there's waste, but also the story that a producer and a manufacturer tells of the life cycle of that product goes through to after the consumer used it. Whereas then there's also the story of waste for a consumer. So a lot of our listeners might be consumers of goods, and there's a certain amount of waste with that. But a lot of the listeners might also be producers of goods, and there's also waste with that. And opportunities, I think, in both of those cycles. And I think important to actually keep in mind that when we think about waste, there's these two, or there's actually more stories, but these stories, I think maybe that's an important thing. There's stories to waste, and there's stories to the creation of goods, and therefore also waste.
Ashley, early on you mentioned, before we started the show, you mentioned some figure to me around the amount of electronic waste that we're dealing with. I mean, we always have this, I've heard this phrase bandied about, you can't manage what you can't measure. Do we have any sort of exact figure around how much electronic waste we're producing?
It's almost impossible, certainly at this stage, because we haven't had systems and processes for measuring the waste. So the estimates range from up to 500,000 tons of electronic waste. That's what actually comes out as waste per annum. It could be anywhere from 300.
Just repeat that figure again.
We worked on the assumption that there is 360,000 tons of electronic waste that comes out. That is really at its end of life, comes out as waste. And that figure could be as high as 500,000. The basket of electronics is astounding. It's growing at 4 times the rate of solid municipal waste globally. So that is the escalation in that waste stream. There was recently a Nat Geo program that predicted that by the year 2040, we will have 250 billion connected devices. So those are really just a particular type of electronics. So you can imagine the scale of that. That's for, if there are 10 billion people on the earth at that time, that's about 25 pieces of electronic equipment per person that's connected. So there's a phenomenal number of streams or subsectors. We've largely been focusing on domestic appliances, large domestic appliances, and ICT goods.
Yeah, these are your radios, your fridges, your TVs,
your
all
alarm clocks, anything that works on electric current or battery is considered electrical and electronic equipment. So you have... I heard that in the small domestic appliances or the small appliances sector, there are over 200 million items. That's types of electronics.
Is this just in South Africa, or
this is
globally?
Globally, yeah. So a large amount of that is replicated in South Africa. Then you have your medical devices subsectors, your automotive industries, your heavy industrial goods, your solar sector, your lighting, and it goes on. So all of these waste streams are covered by the current, the new extended producer responsibility regulations.
Those figures are absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. This is all the junk that people buy when it comes to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, New Year, whatever. Every month people are just buying things in order to fill some hole in themselves and polluting the environment. I remember reading the Limits to Growth report from the Club of Rome that was published in the 1970s. I mean, that was a seminal report that basically predicted that we would get here at some point. At some point we're going to be overwhelmed by the products of our society and just living in some kind of global landfill. Is that what we're heading for?
Yes, I would say the landfill at the moment, in terms of household goods, is in everyone's house. I'm sure you can think of a number of cell phones, old cameras, cables.
Tamagotchi.
We all have it.
Yes.
And that's just on a household level.
Yeah, and every couple of years we it needs to move out, and then we need to get new things.
And nobody knows what to do with it really.
Yeah.
At this stage, but we are addressing that going forward.
Yeah. I mean, this kind of brings me back to, I think, something that I also read, a book that I read years ago called The Waste Makers by Vance Packard, which really had an impact on me. Besides his other book, which is about the advertising industry, the hidden persuaders. But the Waste Makers really talks about this issue of planned obsolescence. I remember being a kid, and my grandmother had this washing machine from the 1960s, and this was the 1980s. Like 20 years later, she had this old, funny old washing machine that still worked. Cars back then still worked for years, decades. I mean, you still find those cars that were made in the 60s today. And so what happened there? Why do things break down so easily and we get rid of them?
Well, I think the products are coming from all over the world, and different countries and different manufacturers apply different standards. So I think I wouldn't want to isolate particular regions, but there are some places where it's just easier to make cheap electronics and flood the market. But the law now is designed in such a way as to encourage you to use more recycled content, to increase the lifespan of a product, to reduce the toxicity of the elements in electronics, to reduce the size, etc. So it asks from us to, what they say, modulate the cost depending on the complexity of the materials that are used in electronics, and the toxicity of those materials and the size of those materials. Yeah.
Well, we're going to come back to that a bit later, Ashley. Emil, the National Department of Environmental Affairs has put in place new mandates, new targets for organic waste. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So very interestingly, the National Department has put a ban on liquid waste going to landfill. And in the description of that, 40% of any item with a moisture content of above 40%, which is actually a lot of our food waste and our organic waste, is nationally gazetted to be banned from landfill. The Western Cape government, however, has gone one step further, where they've now looked at a number of influencing factors to justify the need to divert organic waste from landfill. And they've gone one step further and imposed a ban on organic waste. So they've set targets of 50% by 2022, which is next year, and 100% by 2027. Very ambitious, but they are looking at targeting commercial waste. So here, that 50%, they aim to reach it by targeting 100% of the commercial waste. It is the lowest hanging fruit. It is the majority of the food of organic waste that we are sending to landfill. If you look at consumers, it's only about 4% of the total waste going to landfill at the moment. So it's a very low portion. And the predominant portions of waste that we're landfilling at the moment is definitely pre-consumer, so within the production lines. So you're looking at 30 to 40% of that food being produced or brought in or transported, not even reaching the shelf or the
consumer. I mean, this is a shockingly wasteful exercise that we are engaged in, especially when you consider that there's so many hungry people in our city, in our country, and we are. I mean, I've read certain figures around the amount of just food waste that actually gets lost before. Yeah, exactly what you're saying. I mean, there are organizations that actually work to divert that and actually get it to people who need it, right?
100%. So the interesting thing in the value chain is that with more and more pressure being put on this broken food cycle and broken biocycle, we are slowly learning that, listen, what the behavior of 20, 30 years ago is completely unacceptable. This linear economy, this full waste strategy is, just not a way for us to be sustained in nature. And I think that's what this sector is trying to address. I think something like 10 million tons of organic waste gets landfilled every year. We've got people that are hungry. We've got soil that is being depleted. We've got massive issues in uneven wealth distribution. And the sector within the green economy can definitely play a massive role at alleviating all of our social economic issues. It's the reason I got into business, and it's the reason I believe in this industry in itself. And looking at something as archaic as landfills and going, do you know what? This is not the way nature intended us to behave and to live on this planet and to coexist. If you look at forests, it's as simple as understanding that a forest loses its leaves in autumn, it grows and makes its own compost, and that forest sustains itself. And I think the more that we can look at these resources, the more we can add value to this, to all the elements. And predominantly, I think what we're talking about now is the primary cycle within this circular economic sort of landscape, and looking at getting those nutrients back to the soil. I think that is our primary function that we need to start addressing. There's obviously all the environmental benefits of this, but I think that our food security is our primary responsibility in a developing economy as ourselves.
Thank you, Emil. Listeners, there you have it. We're talking about waste in all its aspects. Looking at electronic waste, e-waste, the huge mountains of goods that we consume, that we buy and then discard a couple of years later. And also the food waste that we produce and the broken food system this evening on the Cornerstone Critical Dialogues. I'm going to play a song right now, which kind of has always kept me thinking about these issues. It's a classic song. You may recognize it. I'm sure you will recognize it. But it's called "What's Going On," and I hope it makes you think about where we're at.
You know perspective.
I'm going to put the mics on. That's Marvin Gaye with What's Going On. And listeners, he wrote that song, sang that song in the 1970s already. That's a long time ago. And so these issues have been with us for a very long time. We are not dealing with them in a very good way, but there are attempts. There are people on the case, and I have two of them in the studio with me tonight, Emile Fourie and Ashley Duploy, who are dealing with the issues of electronic waste as well as organic waste, and figuring out what needs to be done, what should be done, what we could be doing to really improve the way we deal with all the products of our hyper consumerist society. Nina Lowe, a lecturer at Cornerstone Institute, you had some questions.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
I think first off, when Emile mentioned 10 million tons of organic waste, and I mean, I can't even fathom what that should look like. So I tried to see, okay, what weighs a ton, and because of that, how many of that can I see? So say a giraffe, I think can weigh about a ton. That's 10 million giraffes, and you can't even fathom what that should look like. I mean, it's yeah. And when you then think about that, and then you mentioned that I think consumer waste is 4% of that. Which is a scary idea. So we've got commercial organic waste being then the rest of it. So at the moment, where we have in the e-waste, we've got the extended producer responsibility, or that the concept of that. Who's taking responsibility to change this, to take away? So if we've got this demand of taking away the organic waste from landfills, whose responsibility at the moment? Who takes that responsibility?
So at the moment, the responsibility is shared. So we're in a climate where government is starting to put in legislation to assist in the diversion and beneficiation of this waste stream. At Oraso, what we're looking at is trying to create an enabling environment for our members. So if you are in the organic waste processing space, we wanting our members to be able to acquire as much organic waste as possible so that they can assist in these targets, divert, and obviously grow this sector. Where it is sort of duplicated, where these extended producer responsibilities are influencing waste generators, is that there's, for example, the Consumer Goods Council, where all of the big retailers are pushing and driving towards that. Government is to a degree putting quite a bit of pressure on the retail sector, the agro-processing sector, and like I said earlier, trying to target the low-hanging fruit. Where it's going to shift, and I think this is where I think with the growth and development of the space and increased competition, and pricing becomes more competitive, I think there is going to be a point where producers are going to have to start looking very hard at how they are processing and treating the organic waste. So I think in a landfill, I think our landfill rates in the Western Cape are going up substantially. So anywhere between 7 and 16% a year, our landfill fees are going up. The rest of the country is not looking that good. And I think that we're hoping that in the organic space that this active competitive supply and demand market with pricing, being charged for and gate fees being charged for will allow this industry to actually stand on its own 2 feet, where we don't need, where consumers look at waste and waste generators look at waste and they're already paying for it, but now they're paying the right people to process. And I think that's what we're hoping the shift will change.
And it's important to actually know that, or note that producers at the moment, or waste generators, are paying for it. So we're paying for something that's not being used. We're paying for waste to happen.
Yeah.
So we might just as well do something with it. So in terms of, so immediately I'm thinking business opportunities. So say a person realizes there's a lot of bread, which is most probably organic waste,
Yeah.
and to use stale bread for the generation of energy.
Okay.
So is that an actual business opportunity? Should that person rather partner with a waste generator, so someone baking the bread, or how do you see that opportunity becoming a reality?
So the easiest way and how waste works is it's not difficult to acquire waste. Right. What is difficult is to have the capacity to process, to handle, and to manage waste, and to have a secure and a lucrative offtake market. So the supply chain that you're looking at is relatively easy to get into. A baker or someone that's got access to some type of raw material, especially if it's organic, you would be able to obviously either now charge a service for it or get access to the waste, as long as you licensed or in legally able to acquire that. I think what the critical element to this value chain is having a offtake market for your supply. And I think the best example to highlight the fragility of this economic value of this economic cycle is looking at dry recycling. And what happened in the sector, and you spoke about waste and dispose and why we're consuming and being driven into that. What happened with the sector from an economics perspective is that people were starting to pay a rebate for something of no value, of something of a negative value. For you to take goods, handle it, process it, make sure you've got security, transport it, pay staff at fair wage rates and fair salary rates. That value chain just does not exist. And that's one reason we've kept it this way separate. Until you can get to a point where we have sufficient input materials and you're producing a product of greater value, that's when circular economics kicks in. And that's when you can then shift it and then start adding more value to something that already has value and share that cost between all stakeholders.
Emil, you actually, besides being a committee member of Orasa, you actually have a business, a company that deals with organic waste. Can you tell us a bit about that, your company?
Sure.
Why Waste?
So founded 2010, formalized, founded 2008, getting into just making worm farms at home and selling them at a market. So it was just looked at a problem, looked at our archaic system and felt that here's an opportunity to take something that we've looked at for granted and to create something of great value. The big driver for me was that in 2008, 2009, 10% of commercial agriculture was done organically. And for me, that was an economy of scale, something I could tap into. And I said, well, if global demand for organic food increases to 50% even, where are they going to get their organic produce from? And why are we throwing all of the organic waste that we need into a landfill? And that was my aha moment. I look back now realizing, okay, cool, I identified a broken biocycle without knowing, stumbled into it. But it made me look at something that we look at as in waste, and it's got all of its problems, and we drive past it every day, and people are burning things every day. And I said, if I can turn something into something beautiful from a wasted resource, if I can show South Africans that there's an opportunity for you to make something from something that we all have such little regard for, and grow it and develop it, that people can have optimism and hope in a world full of despair.
How's your company doing now?
Pretty good. And yeah, we've employing 23 people. We've got international interns. We've got 2 sites. We're diverting between 10 and 20 tons a day between our 2 sites. We pretty well established within the market, and we're looking to grow and expand in this economy.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, I did a little experiment with what was it? A black soldier fly. I was reading about it, and I found this. Well, it's the problem that you're probably dealing with, which is the waste from restaurants, right? And so I collected from a bunch of restaurants in OBS for a couple of weeks, and I bought these buckets, and it was like a whole thing. I had a site somewhere in Woodstock. But as you say, I quickly came up against this sort of wall where it was like I had all this waste. I had the soldier flies, but it was just became a mess. It's just terrible. But it was, but I mean, it was a good exercise for me. You know, I really got into these protein things. So the larva of the fly you can actually turn into food, and they're making ice cream from it and milk and all this kind of thing, animal feed and there's a big company out in Philippi, I think, that's busy with this agri-protein. Yeah. Have you been to that site?
So I've been to the site, have had conversations. I think they have been bought out by someone else. Long story. So yeah, there is a lot of different other options. You know, I've looked at composting and kept it simple and looked at, how do we just look after our food and return this to the soil. But you could do biogas, you could do anaerobic digestion, and we've got people from the black soldier fly community. So there's also a wide variety of ways to beneficiate this material, and I think a combination of all of it will make this industry more resilient. So, at Eros, we've got stakeholders from each of these sectors. We are speaking to formalized organizations and bodies to come and join with us, because one thing that we are specializing in is this legislation and having a body of diversity. And I think through that we have the listening ear of the Western Cape government, and we're now trying to influence national and regional governments around South Africa, so that we can have one voice. It's pointless having one person shooting a agenda at a national department. There is limited resources. We've got limited money in circulation. So I think the more that people can align with what they believe in and what they stand in, and can see a benefit out of what we're trying to bring to the market, I think the more and the faster this can grow. And it's not always waiting on a specific government to do something. I think speaking to the listeners and everyone here, it's up to us to make our own difference, and we've got sphere of influence, whether it's ourselves, our immediate family, our extended family, friends, and all of those things, or wherever we have a touch point in this world. And I think, the more we realize we need more people to stand up for what is right, for what they believe in, and bring this to the world. I think then we can live in a better South Africa that we all actually see, and not where we currently feel we live. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity in this space.
Yeah. Speaking about opportunity, Ashley, you part of, I think, ERA's mandate, or the work that you're doing, is to unlock the economic opportunity with electronic waste. I mean, when I read your strategy document, I had this picture of people going into computers and taking out the gold and the platinum and melting it and smelting it and becoming rich. Is that what we're looking at?
That's part of it, and unfortunately, that seems to be the part driving everybody. But as you will appreciate, it's a limited resource. So there is gold and other rare minerals in electronics, but that seems to be the focus for everybody. Whereas you have tons, stupendous amounts of flame retardant plastic. So once one achieves scale and you have research capacity to transform those plastics into bricks or roof tiles or things of that nature, it's one thing to do the manufacturing. You're also going to require testing to see whether these materials leach, meaning that when they get water, do some of those toxins flow out, and what's the impact of that? So pretty much on scale, almost everything has value. And I think this is one of the challenges we have is there enough waste in our markets, in the South Africa market, to justify certain processing investments? So unless, for example, CRT screens, which are these old computer screens and TV screens, they have quite a lot of toxic materials in those screens. So, the time has come for them to come out as electronic waste. People aren't buying them any longer, but unless you can secure sufficient quantities of that waste, you probably won't be justified to make any investments in the processing of that waste. So that waste will be bundled and sent overseas, for example. So that's one of the challenges. The Basel Convention restricts the movement of electronic waste. So there is the idea in South Africa among some people that none of our waste must leave, but at the same time we don't have the processing capacity here. So we may have to consider if that we could take waste from other parts of the continent to justify the capital investment in technologies. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you a question around, you said producer responsibility for waste, but how do you get if people are buying products that are manufactured offshore in other countries, it gets imported, comes in in the container ships, how do you hold the producer responsible for that appliance, or what happens to the?
Well, from our point of view, it is, and we've developed a hit list, and we continue with that. We continue with that hit list, because this is a big problem when only some producers are paying and others are ducking. It is a matter of, I wouldn't even say years, months, before people walk away and say, well, we're not interested unless everybody's paying, unless the playing field is completely level. Why should we be paying? So we will certainly, and we have that hit list of looking at companies that are bringing product into the market. So at some stage, as soon as we have the capacity, we're going to take a couple of dozen students, and they will walk from Simonstown to Cape Town along the CBD, and they will walk in every other CBD, and they'll make a record of the shops. They will make a record of all the brands. We will then assess whether those people are contributing towards electronic waste management. If they're not, we will hand the names over to Department of Environmental Affairs. And if they don't act, as I said, it's a matter of time before we say, well, you certainly can't be serious. We're all going home now. So it's in all our interest that we track them. Well, I'll just tell you a bit of my plan.
Yes. No, that's fantastic. Yeah. I'm 100% behind that, because, I mean, really, we cannot go on like this. There's just too much. I mean, I've seen some initiatives around the world. A few years ago, there was this thing called No Buy Day, which is just a fantastic event that encouraged people to not buy. So the exact opposite of Black Friday or Cyber Monday and all this nonsense that we've adopted in South Africa, where everyone just goes crazy at the malls. I mean, people beating each other up for some TV or something. I mean, we've lost our minds.
Just to waste it or to throw it away later.
To throw it away a couple of years later. Replace the TV they got last year at Black Friday, because they got getting some good deal. So yes, listeners, these are the challenges that we face, and I think we, as Ashley said, I think it's really time for somebody to have a big stick, actually, and really, people do not want to listen. People are not compliant with these regulations, and so I mean, I was very surprised, Emile, when I saw those targets the 50% reduction, and then the total ban by 2027 of organics in landfill, because I thought that's absolutely unachievable. I mean, when you go to the Muizenberg landfill site, which I think everyone should do, if you're a teacher out there, please take your kids to go and see that monstrosity that exists over there. Why the high targets?
I think so. It was actually very funny. It was a meeting where this was sort of just numbers were thrown around. I can't even think how long back it was. And I just looked at it as an opportunity at the time. And I said, even if we get to 10% of these targets, we're in a better place than what we started with. And I think the fact that we got, the local government to put pen to paper, put it on a letterhead, get it out there, has made a massive difference and forced people to shift. And I think that is all, it's difficult to police. We're not really a policing state. And there is a lot of loopholes and a lot of opportunities to duck and dive and do what you can to get ahead. But I think what we are seeing is that, it is working. The shift in behavior is definitely happening, and companies are acting within the waste space, and producers are acting within the waste space. And I think it's time that these strategies are seen out. When and how this ban will be implemented, and it leaves a lot of questions, and we've spoken with a lot of local municipalities and looked at integrated waste management plans. So actually we're quite fortunate. City of Cape Town has recently just come out with theirs and looked at an adoptive strategy, and it's promising, for entrepreneurs and business owners in our sector to be looking at this. It is one of the most favorable, fastest growing economic sectors in our economy. And people are taking notice, international funders and people within food security and waste management. There's a lot of international companies coming in here. So I think it is working. And I think that this enabling environment can be replicated for the rest of South Africa. So I don't think that this opportunity is limited to the Western Cape. I think that national government is under pressure to look at this and to address it, and are starting to get the ball in motion. And when you're sitting with the crisis that we are in, less than 7% of population pays tax. We've got a workforce that is desperate for employment. We can't go on just giving out handouts and grants, and it's not sustainable. And the people that you are bringing into society and a dependence nature is not what's going to grow, our country and let our country stand on its own 2 feet. So, I think that these targets are necessary, and I think they must be bold.
And it's to my mind, it might not even be bold enough, because we've got this potential of value to be created, of raw resources that can be input for something new. We've got a lot of people that need jobs. So the opportunity is there. And I think it's amazing that it is potentially bold, but could be bolder, because there's so much to work with. And yes, it's not simple, although you also mentioned that looking at the value chain, there's actually some quick wins and things that you can actually do to work with this. So it is, it's such a valuable source for creating businesses. So I think definitely when I hear these numbers, I think, opportunity, job creation. And that is actually really exciting. So I think when people hear this, they need to realize that waste has got so much potential, and we need to start tapping into just that next step of our own waste as a consumer to change ourselves from consumers to producers, to take that next step of, why am I throwing this away? And then when I go eat somewhere, when I buy groceries, what is this store doing with the things I'm not buying? And just ask those questions, because then we see the next opportunity.
I just want to say, so the thing about there was a video on your website which spoke about the fact that organic waste can really help with the issue of climate change and reducing emissions. I just want to, for the benefit of the listeners, maybe if you could just take people through What happens to organic waste, and what does it do in a landfill? What is the negative impact when we don't do anything clever with it?
So what happens with organic waste is it intends it rots. So it starts fermenting within within a landfill. And what it then releases is actually methane gas as opposed to carbon. That's probably, the methane gas is probably around 15 times more harmful for the ozone layer and for the environment than what carbon is. And it is a massive, massive contributor to climate change and to the problems that we are facing. What we're able to do by diverting is that you're obviously allowed to process and to extract either methane gas if you're doing biogas or anaerobic digestion, or if you are composting and you're aerating, you don't obviously let that methane gas profile build up. And that is the biggest difference. In turn, by returning that organic fraction through to the soil, be it digested in a liquid or solid fraction, be it digested from fly larvae or from compost residues itself, you're then adding that carbon back to the soil, which has always been lost. So you're doubling up in the diversion efforts by improving, obviously, the harmful effects of that gases within the environment.
And I also wanted to ask you the question of, when we think about what could be done, and you spoke about investment, are we sometimes not thinking too high tech in a certain way? Because I know that in places like India, where they have every little village has got a biogas digester, that it's communal resource, and people bring their waste there, and it produces gas that they can then use for cooking and all that kind of thing. You don't think that we're thinking we're trying to be too sophisticated in South Africa?
So definitely. I think we've seen a massive invested biogas plant come and go. And something that's cost us a fortune.
This was in the Western Cape.
In the Western Cape, dressed a Ferrari, coming to play around on our lands. And the biggest issue that we've got is that I've been overseas. I've done a few R&D trips to the Netherlands, to the UK, and looked at all of these systems. I run a very relatively small composting facility. I get to employ 23 people. I've looked at systems overseas where they have 100, 150 tons a day, and they are processing, they're using about 5 people to run that plant. In South Africa, in the economy that we're in the climate that we're in, business owners and investors have to become more responsible with how they invest and what they invest in. We can't afford to lose 70 to 80% of our working force and our working population, whether they are skilled or unskilled. And we need to be responsible in these decision making. So, I think that there is definitely an opportunity in the space to also be smart, maybe not in the e-waste space where it does have to be quite technical, but in the organic space, definitely. Simple compost systems. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can literally just do it in a yard, on an open field, not near your neighbor or anything that's going to make their life a problem. But you are able to do something relatively low tech and be highly effective. Get in machinery when you need it. So your barriers to entry, can be a bit restrictive, but in this space, you can definitely explore. Worm farming, it's a bucket of worms. That is it. Soldier fly, when you got into this, it wasn't anything more than going to some guy and getting some flies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and a few buckets.
Yeah, the eggs and the buckets.
Yeah. And that is it, and it's looking at biotech, and it's looking at biosolutions. I use microbes in my composting process to assist in the breakdown of organic waste. And I think as that grows and develops, and as the economy grows and develops, then you start adding in, things that work with technology and enhance what we need to do. I often look at engagements with first world country and people from first world countries, and they tend to always have a top-down approach in conversations with you. And I often look at them, and my response is generally, I try to be as polite as possible, but my response is always, listen, you guys are so far away from the reality that we're actually closer to where we need to be. And for us to get to this place, we need to look at what you've done and not copy everything for the next 10, 15 years and remain behind, but to look at, right, this works, this fits in with where our country needs to be and where we need to be alongside this planet, and that's what we're going to adapt into our growth development strategies. And I think if we have that approach to it, we can grow with AI. We can be more inclusive and using technology to our benefit, as opposed to having technology coming in and cripple us. So yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think that we have to be too fancy. I think it's horses for courses. And one of the big pushes for me to do this was exactly that. We had legislation that was going to be passed on to us, that I somehow found was a draft policy for German composting, solutions.
Yeah.
And I said,
always looking outside is our problem.
I said, for what? Why do we need this? We're not in Berlin making compost. We're in the fields of Philippi. So, it's just understanding and being practical.
Can I say in the e-waste space as well? The labor-intensive imperative is there. As I said earlier, we don't necessarily have the volumes of waste to justify investment in huge shredders in other parts of the world. They just stick the whole car and the whole the fridge and the whole lot through a shredder, and out comes the chips, and the chips get sorted. So with electronic waste, it's an incredibly complex waste stream. You have, as I mentioned earlier, 200 million types of goods just on the small appliances side. And they are, as you can see, some of them are synthesized materials, other synthetics. They're difficult combinations. So the more you can disaggregate the fractions, what they call the fractions, the higher the value, the homogenized fractions have value. So, if we don't have the capability to process a certain material here, by being able to consolidate that, mostly through manual disassembly, you now make that into a profitable material and resource. So very much in electronic waste, and the regulations actually say that we have to prioritize youth, women, and people with disabilities. So if you look at the current recycling operations and the ones that are reasonably compliant or most compliant to the right environmental standards, they don't have the capacities to meet the kinds of targets that the law has set. The law says, for example, in the first year, you must move up from 25,000 tons to 36,000 tons. Second year, 47,000 tons. Third year, 61. By year 5, we must be collecting 103,000 tons and processing that nationally. So the existing operators don't have that kind of capacity. They certainly are gearing themselves for that, but when you look at even doubling the existing capacity, there is tremendous scope for people from collectors. The law also insists that collectors must be remunerated.
These are, when you say collectors, these are the
informal reclaimers.
Yeah, what we call waste pickers.
Waste pickers, yeah.
But what is, just quickly, what is the current situation with waste pickers? Because I've been to the landfill site, and I see people on the landfill site, and they're collecting, and then at some point they get chased off by the security guards, and it's a whole sort of to and fro kind of thing. There was a big conflict a couple of years back.
There's a national register that's been developed mostly through South African Waste Pickers Association and the African Reclaimers Organization. So a lot of the informal waste pickers don't have identity documents, they don't have fixed place of abode. So it is important that those institutions, SORPA and Arrow, step in the organization of those waste pickers. So in the electronic waste field, we know that most of those informal waste pickers would have come across and managed a toaster or a hairdryer or something like that. So we obviously can't convert not convert, but also to be kind of recognized and developed and trained in the electronic waste recycling space. We have to have a selection of people, and they also have to produce a critical volume. So, the occasional toaster is not going to make you eligible for a collection fee. But if you are bringing, let's say, 100 kilos of electronic waste into the system per month, that will give you a ton. So in our model, we're going to see whether that can work, whether that ton per annum is the critical volume, which will now justify us giving you a service fee, a collection fee, because you're now adding at least a ton to the target. I mean, out of 36,000 tons, but yeah. So right from that level through to people operating collection bins, drop-off points, and so on. So there's a huge number of opportunities.
There's huge opportunities. So if someone's at home listening and they're listening to this conversation and wondering how they could get into this space, what would be the first thing they need to do?
I would say to them, go and visit the ERA website. It's ERA NPC. NPC stands for non-profit company, .co.za. We are in the next 10 days going to be issuing a request for quotations, asking people to come forward with if they believe they can source electronic waste or be part of the system. So that would be a good starting point. Obviously, you're going to have to secure a site if you want to operate a drop-off point. You've got to secure a site that has municipal approval. You must get a license in a waste management license. You are exempt, I think, for, don't know the exact figure, but if you're processing under 1 ton a month, you would be exempt from having all the necessary licenses. So I say secure premises with municipal approval, the right approvals for it, a second-hand goods license, and then contact ERA, and we will assist and talk through that.
And if they get validated or confirmed, you then also have funds available to invest in the business. Is that also an aspect of it?
That's an aspect. So a lot of it will be driven by the subsidy, which we will provide to that business because the first thing we have to do is take custody of the waste, and then we got to track that waste until it is completely dissolved, which is extremely complex. Either it's gone to a compliant site overseas. You can't just send your waste overseas. Your government has to give the other government notice that there's stuff coming, and then they must accept that the stuff is coming. So I lost my train of thought there. You were asking me again?
But the business opportunities and how one would get into.
So in our case, we also have transport opportunities. We're going to have systems where people have to go and collect from either stores. We're going to look at household collection possibilities. So essentially, the way I envisage it in the next couple of weeks, you're going to click on the dot on the map of South Africa, and you're going to find your nearest drop-off point. You're either going to drop your electronic waste there, or you're going to put in an order for collection. And then it's our challenge to look at how do we aggregate that and create the logistics. And then we will have to bring in people to handle that logistic for us.
Like a Uber waste or Uber waste management.
Wow. Big changes coming, listeners. Big changes coming to our lives. These are might seem onerous, but they're positive changes because it's absolutely necessary to really be conscious and to balance out the insanity that happens around all our consumption every year, especially around this time that we're heading into. We need to balance it out with being more conscious about the environment, what happens to all these appliances that we feel we need all the time. There's the little film that is online. You can find it if you Google. It's called Welcome to the Anthropocene. And I first heard this term called the Anthropocene when a few years back when I was at some other organization dealing with climate change. But essentially, Anthropocene means that humans have entered a new geological era, or the world has entered a new geological era called the Anthropocene, which is basically the age of man. And it's based on this notion that if archaeologists 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now, from another planet, let's say that, some aliens were to come to Earth, some alien archaeologists were to come to Earth, human beings would all be gone. But if they were to excavate and dig down, they would still find the evidence of our existence right at the bottom of the ocean, with the little plastic balls and things that we've wasted, all our waste that we've left behind. So this is what we've caused, ladies and gentlemen, only in the last 300 years, let's say 500 years. The bones of the dinosaurs are still there, but those are not really deadly to other beings and all of that sort of thing. But the film, you can go and find the film online, but it's always good to the narration of the film actually puts everything into context, and it's really fascinating. I make a point of playing it to myself at least once a year, once every 6 months.
This is the story of how one species changed a planet. The latest chapter of our story begins in England 250 years ago. Fueled by coal, then oil, several brilliant inventions appeared. They ignited the Industrial Revolution, which spread like wildfire through Europe, North America, Japan, then elsewhere. The great railways, then cars and highways, connected people across the globe. Medical discoveries saved millions of lives. New artificial fertilizers meant we could feed more people. Population rose rapidly. But this was nothing compared with what was to come. The 1950s marked the beginning of the Great Acceleration. Globalization, marketing, tourism, and huge investments helped fuel enormous growth. People swarmed to cities, which became even more powerful engines of creativity. In a single lifetime, the well-being of millions has improved beyond measure. Health, wealth, security, longevity. Never have so many had so much. Yet 1 billion are malnourished. In a single lifetime, we have grown into a phenomenal global force. We move more sediment and rock annually than all natural processes, such as erosion and rivers. We manage 3/4 of all land outside the ice sheets. Greenhouse gas levels this high have not been seen for over 1 million years. Temperatures are increasing. We have made a hole in the ozone layer. We are losing biodiversity. Many of the world's deltas are sinking due to damming, mining, and other causes. Sea level is rising. Ocean acidification is a real threat. We are altering Earth's natural cycles. We have entered the Anthropocene, a new geological epoch dominated by humanity. This relentless pressure on our planet risks unprecedented destabilization. But our creativity, energy, and industry offer hope. We have shaped our past. We are shaping our present. We can shape our future. You and I are part of this story. We are the first generation to realize this new responsibility. As the population grows to 9 billion, we must find a safe operating space for humanity, for the sake of future generations. Welcome to the Anthropocene.
Yeah, so that gives some context to where we're at. It's a very good reminder of the state of things, and also then towards the end a message of hope that we do have agency. We can do something about the damage we've caused, but we actually have to do something. We have to and I think waste is a very good place to start, because it really makes us conscious of the fact that we we are part of nature. I think a lot of the time we see ourselves as separate from nature. I mean, I have my sort of reasons for why that is, why we've come to that point, but I won't go into that right now. And so, talking about the issue of waste this evening on the Cornerstone Critical Dialogues with Ashley Deploy of the E-Waste Recycling Authority, Emile Fourie of the Organics Recycling Association of South Africa, and Nina Lowe, who is a business lecturer at the Cornerstone Institute. So guys, where are we? I mean, whenever I listen to that piece, it just puts me in a state, it's like.
But I think it's important, like you said, there's hope. And from our conversation as well, I also have hope that this is a big problem, but there's so much opportunity. And also these, and Emile, you specifically mentioned it, that we need diverse solutions. So you don't only have to tackle one area of this. We need the diversity in the solutions. We need different ideas, and the market is actually big. So it's very interesting for me to hear about the e-waste and the fact that we actually need scale. So you need quantity, where we've got that in organics, but which makes it a bit harder. But still, there's enough. The market is big enough to find multiple solutions to actually fix this, or to work on it. So fix is also an interesting word, because at the moment we've got waste. In time, we shouldn't have waste. I spoke to someone today and they said, yeah, in 20, 30 years, no, in 200 or 300 years, we should be here. And I thought, no. When we think about waste in 20 to 30 years, we should be in a completely different place.
We're facing mountains of waste. I mean, around the globe, there just isn't enough landfill space, and not in this country. Already, you need to consider that 70 or more % of our landfills are in a dysfunctional state. Don't even have decent weighbridges, and people are sitting with clipboards writing stuff in that nobody reads. We just cannot continue doing that. The mountain of electronics will drown us all in due course.
And also touching on the processing of it. So it's interesting, I think it's in Rwanda, the Global Alliance for Trade Facilitation. They have a hackathon, an e-waste innovation sprint at the end of the month, 26 and 28 November. And I think we will be able to follow it online, because the hackathon itself is also online. And what they're trying to look at, and it's specific to Rwanda, but when you look at what they're doing, they're actually saying they want to develop capacity and insights and solutions that might spread to the region, but specifically looking at solutions for improving collection and cross-border movement of e-waste for reprocessing in Rwanda, which I think is so given wonderful for their context, and it will be a global collective of people solving for this. But I think it's actually an interesting opportunity to look at what are they doing, what are people finding, and what could be relevant to a South African space.
So I know Nigeria and Ghana, there's certainly been movement in managing electronic waste in those countries. So we are seeing a growing awareness around the continent, and this understanding that we're going to have some trade-offs. The plastics maybe need to go there, and this needs to come here, so that those investments can be justified. The other thing I forgot to mention to you, never had the opportunity to, is that ERA is also part of a global WE forum. So we're part of a community of 43 organizations like ourselves operating on every continent. So we do have access to global best practice, but as Emile says, it's for us to have a look at it and to continue to craft our own solutions with an awareness of what's possible, but more importantly, what is appropriate to our context.
I want to talk to you, or ask you about the question of education around waste, Ashley. I know that you've been in the sort of education space for a while, and in your previous career incarnations, but particularly when it comes to making people conscious or aware of the issue of waste, and particularly, I mean, I always think you need to start with school kids, you know, because they're more open to seeing it, and you know that will have obviously benefits further down the line when they grow up and become more conscious. What do you think about it?
Look, in 2016, I worked with two young men, and they were about 22 at that time, and in Pietermaritzburg, and they had phenomenal energy. They're called Songumvelo, and they've now expanded from waste management into running a community TV station where they are. The incredible awareness raising programs in schools. I think that short time I worked with them, they had been around to about 60 or 80 schools that they could access. They ran campaigns in the community. They'd collect a couple of people out on a field, give them bags, and within half an hour, the bags are filled up. They bring it back to the school, and then they run through those waste bags and they talk about the value of what is there and how much money there is. So in a very practical way, just for half an hour's exercise, they create the awareness around some of the value in the waste, and obviously the environmental benefits are obvious. They've developed songs. When they see the Songumvelo logo, the kids are singing a song. So certainly the kids in Pietermaritzburg, through this project, their awareness of waste is huge. They're already seeing the opportunities here, so definitely something I would like to see happen again and again in all our communities across the Western Cape, across the country. There's scope for young people like that who can energize others, and we'd love to speak with them. There are people who'd like to look at creating art from waste. I know somebody's asked for where they can access the keyboards and build Scrabble sets. There are magnets in certain components. Some kind of kitchen utensils for holding knives can be created out of that. So we also want to encourage people, young people especially, take a look around the computer, the keyboard, and try and imagine which of those components could be transformed into art or useful other things.
So upcycling, recycling, and being creative around all these things. I had once. I'm going to come to you with an idea. Well, I'll give you the idea for free. But I always had this idea, which was around cell phones. You know, because. How many cell phones do we go through every year? And I was this thing of I just wanted to make a huge mountain of cell phones and put it somewhere, in the middle of the city, so that we can actually see what we're doing, make it visible.
And then if you were to extract the high value, the one that everybody's chasing, you are going to end up with something the size of this nib, and on the other side you're going to sit with a mountain of plastic and other synthetic materials that need to be taken care of. And that's the issue here is we have to take care of the total product. And because this is what's happening, you've seen people burn cables around children. They're busy killing themselves. They're busy killing the community who's sitting around there, inhaling these toxic fumes. So in our model, once we get hold of that cable into the system, we will pay for that. So you're not only going to get the value of the copper, you're also going to get something for the covering, and because we will be paying by kilo. That's one way in which we're trying to encourage people not to engage in poor recycling practices.
Just a quick one on that. So obviously you're highlighting the complexities to recycling this material. What are the international practices for those type of plastics and composite materials that we're dealing with?
I'm not but I'm not a recycle. I did recycling a bit,
Okay.
but I basically refurbished, not myself, but a team of young people refurbished computers so that we could run computer training schools, so we could give our students a 800 rand computer to take home, so we could set up internet cafes. And so we generated in about 2 months 250,000 rand, which we used to run our center, keep the lights on, buy ink, buy paper, pay the telephone, and so on.
Yeah, so
And that's how I actually got to e-waste, by needing some resources to run a youth development center.
okay. Yeah, always driven by pressures. I like that. Yes, so it's something I've looked at, and it's something I follow quite interestingly. Is the innovations around these new industries. And I mean, there's guys looking at food waste. When I started, there was food waste, compost, and then even composting was, no, this is actually how you do it. No, this is how you do it. And you sat on a forum at 2 a.m. with some guy in Australia, and they're a professor, and you know on the back of your computer, but they can't see who you are, and you get your information. And now I'm looking, and guys are extracting vegetable oil to do solar. And there is endless opportunities looking at what we've been throwing in landfills for decades. And I think, there's something I've always wanted to get going, is the living lab, where you can go and you can play with these items and materials, and kids can learn cross-sectionally between universities from, Stockholm to UCT or UWC or Cape Tech or wherever you're at, and you can start sharing knowledge and start learning together, and leveraging this stream that we sit with. So I was just my curiosity.
There's this notion of what they call cradle to cradle.
Yeah.
Initially was cradle to the grave, but cradle to cradle. And just for the listeners there out there, can you just maybe explain what that means, Ashley? Cradle to cradle. I mean, because at some point you almost have to be designing something from the beginning with its end in mind, or how it's going to get back.
That's absolutely the concept of the circular economy, is that the waste has to be ideally reprocessed and used for the same purpose or a similar purpose, or no, completely alternative.
Yeah, I mean, for example, when you look at plastic waste, and people always say, well, recycling, a couple of years ago, there still is this whole buzz around plastic waste and plastic bags, but a lot of that waste actually cannot be reused.
Yeah.
It has to be disposed of in another way. You can't make the same, because it loses its qualities of the initial purpose.
I've just a couple of days seen a brick made out of waste. Unfortunately, it hasn't been tested yet to see whether it is a usable product. But I think that obviously with the resources, with some concentration of resources and some system of managing the waste, we will see the acceleration of those solutions coming out of what now is unusable.
And at the moment we're speaking about waste we're speaking specifically about waste, but when we design out waste, so when we design with no waste in mind, then in time, and that's where this conversation changes, where in 10, 20 years we won't have a waste conversation, we have how to better design, because waste, we shouldn't design with waste in the conversation at all. We should design with the second life. So with the cradle, so the birth of a product, to the new birth of the product, and a new birth, and a new birth.
I remember going to one of the design indabas a few years, actually a long time ago, about 10, 12 years ago, and there was this Persian designer there, Persian-Canadian guy, a very famous designer, and he had this talk, and he was talking about the fact that, the toothpaste or the shampoo bottle, the toothpaste tube that we use for a couple of weeks, a month or so, throw it away, it ends up and it's lined with that, some kind of metal some of them have inside there, some kind of aluminium or something.
Or foil, foil
liner. Something like that.
Plastic with foil.
In this thing, and everyone uses that, and he was saying what we should actually be thinking of is designing, making those things out of a kind of a plastic that is biodegradable, that actually dissolves. You know, you can make. There are plastics that exist like that, like made out of some kind of sugar.
Cornstarch.
Yeah, you know, and then at the end of it, you just put it in the water, and it dissolves, and it goes down the drain. You know, but instead now what we have is plastic millions.
And the system should. I mean, I know in from what I heard. In France, because of the rain and so on, the car tires were making a noise through the streets, so they added a compound to the rubber to reduce the noise, but that made the tire not recyclable. So a manufacturer of that sort needs to be punished. In fact, they must be made to take every single tire back and take it home and go and build a mountain in their own backyard out of.
And these products, these composite products, so when you think about something like a running shoe, the amount of different materials used for that, it's something like 36, if not more. So to take that apart, like in a lot of electronics, I mean, it's not an easy process. And that's why you start finding, so there is a biodegradable, I think, toothpaste, I don't know, your tube at the moment somewhere, or in the South African market at least, which is amazing. So you're starting to see it. It's higher, or the price at the moment is not yet competitive, or you're paying for green. But those things are happening. So you're also starting to see shoes being molded to be so that they can actually be recreated. And again, that whole idea of how do we design. So for designers and for researchers, having that conversation, saying, okay, cool, how do we do this so that we don't have waste? And it's interesting. So when we think about the Anthropocene and the fact that it's human-centered, we need to understand that we're part of nature. And I think it's critical that you also said it, that means that so when we think about something like design thinking, and when we design for the human, designing for the human or for ourselves shouldn't only be, oh, I don't like this noise on the road. Let's just get out the noise. And now we add another layer that's toxic, or that's not biodegradable, or that's not recyclable. So understanding that comfort and what we like, or the design,
our convenience.
Yeah, our convenience. Thanks. The convenience, that shouldn't be the main aim of design. And this whole the conversation of consumerism and the economic model, where we're saying growth, linear growth, is the idea of how we develop and how we grow and how we build the economy. That's not helping to distribute value or distribute wealth. So, and in a similar vein, when we design for convenience, we're not really designing for I want to take the stab and say we're not designing for quality and for durability. So we also need to understand, in using certain products, that the presence and us being and using this product should be stronger than just the convenience of using the product. Or and if we want convenience, how do we design convenience with the same principles in mind?
So there's certainly, I mean, I think EPR here and globally, and it's certainly developing globally. In some European markets, they've had this for over 20, 30 years, where the producers take responsibility for the waste that they put in. So there's certainly there's a growing imperative to design for the environment, to design for that zero waste scenario.
I just want to throw a spanner in the works here. Not a spanner, but let me play devil's advocate for a second. It's the question of politics, right? I mean, we've had the local government elections. There's elections coming up, and all of that kind of thing. South Africa has a Green Party somewhere. That existed. I mean, I've met the people that started that thing. Do you think there's space for a Green Party actually to win some seats and actually be in the seats of power and pushing these kinds of agendas? Or you think the current dispensation, the people who currently run things, are aware and conscious enough to take things forward?
I think the more you find those young activists in the schools doing that kind of awareness raising, the more you are building a base for a Green Party. So given where we've been recently and given where we are at the moment, I think it's going to take a while, but I think in the coming years, there's definitely going to be there is already, I think, a stronger awareness of the environment. So we've got our Greta Thunbergs and so on coming through the ranks, I'm sure.
Yes, fantastic.
But I think also a combination of having the Green Party then, but also because of people coming through the ranks, actually knowing what this is about and really wanting to change it.
Yeah.
So in all parties, people will have that understanding. And yes, having that specific focus, but that should be the conversation. But given we're biased, we're a biased set. So,
I think our generation, Ryan, a bit older, our peers have certainly taken on the eco war in a lot stronger way than we ever did.
Yes.
We wanted the political kingdom, I think.
And discovered other things. I'm going to leave it there, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I personally, I've got friends who say to me, there's been the COP that just happened now. You should be hopeful, and things seem to be changing. It's all in the headlines and everything. But I've been around long enough to be very cynical about these things. I think in 2002 September, I attended something called the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg. It was at the Sandton Convention Center. 20,000 people from around the world flew into Johannesburg and spent a week discussing all of these issues that they're discussing almost 20 years later and now again. And at the end of that week, I was so depressed. I was looking there. I was like, how do you think that by bringing all of these people who have actually caused the F up, and then they're going to, how do you think they're going to solve these problems? And I was really depressed, and so I've still got friends now who say, you should be more hopeful. I said, but we were talking about this stuff 20 years ago, and nothing has changed.
But the motto is still, I think, was keep people, planet, prosperity. Keep it center, and it will take root.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about all of these profound issues around the environment and waste and what can be done and what the possibilities are, because there are possibilities. If you are sitting at home, wondering what to do, don't have a job, it's December, all of these things, there is hope. Ashley Deploy here is a man with a dream, and he's been at it for 7 years, maybe longer, quite possibly much longer, but for the past 7 years, really in the space of e-waste. And so if you want to get into the space, get in touch with ERA NPC. But think about it first. Think about what you could do. I think often we are more resourceful than we like to think. It just takes a bit of thinking.
Just one idea. Some of these markets, weekend markets, pay 20 Rand or 50 Rand for a stall, and tell people to bring their electronic waste there, and that should get you going. I've certainly got a few boxes, and I'm sure you have too.
Yeah. There's been quite a culture shift over the last 20, 30 years. I remember my dad used to always be fixing things. There was a time when people used to fix things. Instead of throwing it away. Now you just things are so cheap. You just go get another one. Throw that thing away. How do we bring that culture back? Is it possible?
We're certainly encouraging the reuse of electronics. So that's obviously the first line of attack. Yes, it certainly needs to be encouraged. We're really at the start of our systematic engagement with this, but certainly it's something that we will promote.
You get like a repair club at schools, after school, instead of send them to detention and get them to fix some broken things.
Bring some things to school and maybe a little nerds club there. Take it apart, redo it,
turn it into something else. Fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about all these things. I'm going to play a song now. We're going to take a break for some music. I feel like we've been talking for a long time, but let's play. What's today? The 18th.
18th.
On Saturday, there's something quite interesting happening. You may remember her from a few weeks ago. Who was in the studio with us, Maya Spector, and she's doing something on this coming Saturday. I believe the tickets are sold out, the live show tickets, but since we live in this digital age, there are unlimited tickets to watch the show on air. But here she is telling us about what it is.
Hi, this is Maya Spector, and I'm doing a show on the 20th of November at 7 p.m. live from the Penny Lane Studios in Cape Town. The show is called Honey, Heartache, and Lockdown, and you can secure your tickets on Quicket. It's 120 Rand for the sit-down concert and 70 Rand for the live stream show. This concert is made possible by Concerts SA, The Daily Voice, and a portion of the proceeds will be donated to the Cornerstone Institute Bursary Fund. So please support this concert, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Thank you.
Community Champions is a new show on Bush Radio every Thursday at 9 p.m. Cornerstone Institute CEO Noel Daniels is the host and chats with various community champions about their life, their work, their struggles, and the music that inspires them to keep fighting for a better world. Conversational and laced with humor, the show is part of a new collaboration between Bush Radio and Cornerstone Institute, a private institute of higher learning in Cape Town, offering a range of on-campus and online programs in community development, psychology, business, and much more. If you're looking for inspiration on how to change the world, tune in to Community Champions on Bush Radio 89.5 FM with Cornerstone CEO Noel Daniels every Thursday at 9 p.m.
Bush Radio 89.5 FM.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's coming up after the show. We're now in the last 20 minutes of the Cornerstone Critical Dialogues, episode 7. After this, if you stay tuned, you'll be listening to Noel Daniels, who is going to be leading the Community Champions show that he does. Please stay tuned for that after the show. Yeah, well, back to us here, talking about all these things. I struggle sometimes, you know what I'm saying, to be positive and hopeful and yeah. So, but yeah, well, we have to. It's terrible. Yeah. No. Yeah, it could be worse. It could be worse. The fact is, I think that we always hold into this notion of, while there is life, there is hope. While we're still here, we still have a chance to do something. And so I think this has always kept me going. And the fact that but then sometimes I look at people and I just wonder, like I see the things that people do, and I'm like, how is it possible? How are we ever gonna get out of here? I mean, the other day I must be honest. The other day I saw this. I mean, some guy was walking towards me. I was walking on the pavement. This guy walked past. He was like walking towards me. Okay, no mask, nothing. Just took a huge spit, a gob of spit, like in front of me, in the street. You know what I'm saying? I was like, what the heck? I turned around. I was like, and he was like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe it.
I know. I get that feeling too sometimes.
So anyway, we're talking about waste, people. Waste. I mean, I think it sometimes just takes people to be more, let me say, conscious or aware. I mean, I mean, the thing that drove me to undertake this soldier fly thing was really, going to the restaurants. And I'm not a bar fly or whatever, but like I was going to a lot of restaurants in OBS, and I just seeing that, peeping into the kitchen and seeing this every single day. There's all this waste. I mean, coffee waste could be. You can grow mushrooms on coffee waste, apparently. There's so many different uses for these things that people just throw away. We don't think about it. You go to the coffee shop, it ends up in that thing, that puck, and and then you don't ask a question about where does it go, but every single day people are doing that.
Yeah.
And just to start thinking more consciously about our behavior and how that impacts on the environment.
And there's someone actually doing research specifically with coffee or coffee waste and designing shoes from it. So you making that into a textile. So the amount of research. So I get so encouraged after a conversation like this because I meet people that's busy doing these things. And there's definitely, so there's a lot of research and was previously mentioned, but I think the scope for research and institutes of research or of higher learning then to partner with entrepreneurs, but also with government. And that partnership is so key in this discussion because it is something that touches on all of us. And working together to solve is really necessary. Yeah. And the amount of research. So I think you also mentioned that there's scope for, or you want to kind of scale enough so that we can start looking at some of the research. And that's why we need tertiary or higher education institutions that can actually start doing this research.
Yes. There has been work on putting together a curriculum for people working in the electronic waste sector, and it's in fact quite well developed by this stage. So there is a lot of training going in, and also we've been approached by a number of institutions. At this stage, still largely around the data and the legislation. But increasingly also people are looking into the technologies and specific solutions for specific fractions. Okay. So there's growth all round in tackling the electronic waste sector.
Yeah, and I think also in just getting to notice your own waste. So from a consumer perspective, this whole thing of storytelling, I think for everyone listening, the next time you throw something away to this place that's away, tell the stories. So try, whether there's someone in the room with you, try to tell the story of what's now happening with this thing that you threw away. Just to start the consciousness of what's the story of something when I stop seeing it. Because I think that's the thing we're not aware of in any of the waste. And then also specifically, I think with electronic waste, before we go stand in line or sleep outside a store next week, Thursday, or then before the Monday online, think twice and go take stock of the things that you've got at home, and make sure that, or just know that these are the things I have, this is what I use. Where's it going to go if I'm not going to use it anymore, and if I'm going to buy new things? And yes, there's an economy to upkeep, but I think we need to have another conversation on how do we actually do that? How do we stop linear growth and really wealth distribution? But that's maybe something else.
And enough is a feast.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we had a couple. So we had a bit of wealth redistribution a few months ago in KZN. I'm saying it was an early Christmas for a lot of people.
You see, and I wonder, was that waste distribution?
Yeah, people say, well, if I also want that, So yeah, I mean, this is really the thing. The question of what do we need and what do we want? I think a lot of people don't make that distinction. There are things we want before we just want them, and then do we actually need them? Are they really beneficial to our lives? I mean, you've got kids these days now who are 10 years old and they want their own iPhone.
Or they want their second iPhone.
Yeah.
It breaks my
and so what are we teaching our kids? Around all this sort of hyper consumption and I mean the cell phone is really, besides it used to be a tool for communication, and now it's almost it's a marketing tool. It's like this plug you plugged into the system that really just pumping you full of these desires.
The Matrix.
Yeah, yeah.
Comes and finds you.
Yeah, you can't.
You do need that.
Yeah, you can't escape it. I mean, I've got a 12-year-old who's like, she wants to go to Kalk Bay to get some things she saw on Instagram. Some pants and da. Then it's driving out to Kalk Bay, and then it's insane. What's what we've become, really. Human beings. I sometimes want to give up, but
Don't.
I won't, guys. No, there is hope, guys. There's hope.
Maybe not for you, but for your 12-year-old.
Yeah. No, but I really think there is this. There's this notion of. Everything is society almost allows everything. Everything is allowed. We have this very permissive society, and I think a lot of the time we don't necessarily. I think one of the keys is to ask. Everything may be allowed, but is everything beneficial? Is it really beneficial for a high school teenager to have a cell phone all the time? And so these are the sort of profound questions that I think we fail to ask, and then we wonder. Why are we so disassociated? Why, families are broken. People don't want to have conversations. We sit in front of the TV. I mean, we don't even sit in front of the TV anymore.
Yeah. We sit in front of our own screen.
Yeah, it's like two screens.
I don't want to watch what you're watching.
Yeah, I mean, there remember a time when there used to be an issue on TV dinners. First of all, there was no TV. No, we all have dinner and we're going to talk. How was your day? What did you do? Then it was like TV dinners, sitting in front of the TV and then not talking. And then now it's like you don't even have to be in the same room. Yeah. Go to your room, take your meal.
Well, the TV's on and you're all looking at the screen.
And the intentionality of how we relate to others and how we build relationships, I think has got a lot to do with waste and this our relationship with waste and the fact that we move through things and we're not intentional. And I think, and it speaks to this of go have that dinner. Don't have the screen or the or TV dinner. Have the dinner. Have a conversation with someone because that will change our approach to waste, I think.
Yeah. Have you tried to take a cell phone away from a 12-year-old? No, they don't like. They do not like it. They will fight you tooth and nail. I've actually seen it. So, yeah. And also, I mean, I don't want to say that. I mean, the past 2 years, I think, has really brought this issue to the fore. This basic pause on the global economy. That maybe has forced us to engage with each other more. And actually, I mean, there was that issue with the ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal, which really just highlighted the fact that this whole supply chain thing that is invisible to most of us, that we don't see, but it's there, and sometimes it can get snagged. And actually, I thought that was a good thing, just to make us more remind us of the fact that we're not this sort of all-powerful consumer.
I think also we saw just during that very hard initial lockdown, how nature recovered very quickly and started just exploring places that people had forgotten or you just don't get to see. And I think that. Just looking at what a little bit of effort and a little bit of more, as you said earlier, consciousness brings to this situation, how quickly nature fixes itself. And I think if we can find ways to coexist and maybe be, less influential in that space and allowing it to just, self-generate, I think we'll very quickly get back to a place of greater hope.
Could I add something? The extended producer regulations has also come into effect for paper and packaging and lighting. So the producers of paper and packaging and lighting equipment similarly have to be, the law requires them to be involved in an extended producer responsibility scheme. So there are more formalized opportunities in those sectors as well.
Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the Cornerstone Critical Dialogues. Are there any final words, guys, from you, if you just want to wrap things up?
I think for entrepreneurs specifically, realize the opportunities and tap into it. And then for all of us, have those conversations on the stories of waste, just to be more conscious of what we're actually wasting and what's happening in our market in order to actually see the opportunities.
From me, it's directly to the listeners. It is a take on a quote from Deepak Chopra in his book in 2010, I think it is. And goes along the lines of, we can't rely on anybody other than ourselves. So you can't rely on government, you can't rely on the systems and the things that are failing us, but ourselves to address the issues that are really pressing us at this moment in this day and age. He wrote that in 2010 and it's still very prevalent today. And I think that no matter who you are, no matter what your background, no matter what your circumstance is that you have the ability to change the world. And it might be something small and it might be something big, but you can do it in whatever walk of life that you envision for yourself. So I think that's sort of just my last words for the night.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Ryan. Nothing profound to add except to echo what the other two guests have said. And really, I want to encourage people, listeners, to take a look at our website, and there will be opportunities posted there soon. So we'll have an interactive, we're busy developing it now, an interactive platform where people who want to get into the space will register, and we'll follow them up. And if they're not quite ready, there'll be a hand-holding process. Hopefully, the budgeting is not that easy in this game with poor data, but hopefully we will have, aside from the subsidies, other direct investments and infrastructure and operations to support new businesses.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you, Ashley Deploy from Era NPC. Go to the website, as you said. Emil Fourie from Orasa, Organics Recycling Association of South Africa, and Nina Lowe, Cornerstone Business Lecturer. That's it for now, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you stay tuned for the community champions after this, but that's all from us. We're going to end off with some music, and hope to see you next week again.
Unlearning proposes that new ways of learning can only be acquired when individuals unlearn those thoughts, those emotions, and those behaviors that prevent us from fully flourishing in the world.
2 weeks into this course, my heart already knew that my entire viewpoint on humanity was going to change.
During the years that I've worked with Taryn, she has assisted me in seeing the potential as an individual, and the course has changed my life for the better. I am the person that I am today because of the course that I enrolled for.
I've been lecturing the content for 7 years, and every year I am in awe of students who share how the content has transformed them both academically and personally. I believe that the world right now is in desperate need of an education that equips individuals with both academic and personal development skills.
Before this course happened, I used to hate people from the bottom of my soul. But after this course, for the first time in my life, I can say that I no longer hate people. I can finally say that I no longer see people for their circumstances, but rather for who they are as people and who they can become.
The things that I learned in my early childhood about who I was not and who I was supposed to be. However, the course showed me the true identity of myself. It showed me that it was okay to be vulnerable. It showed me that it was okay to heal. And throughout the course, I have grown tremendously.
And the unlearning course does that. I realized that the content was so powerfully transformative that it would be irresponsible, that it would be selfish for me not to share it with the world. Unlearning is really a course that I've been lecturing for 7 years, but I've made it bigger, I've made it better, and I'm excited to incorporate the performing arts. I do not believe that unlearning needs to be clinical and boring. We can also make unlearning entertaining and fun.
To anyone that would want to enroll in this course, it will not only benefit you academically, but also individually. It will assist you in presenting yourself as the true individual that you are, but it will also assist you in healing and journeying the life process.
This course was the missing puzzle piece that I needed in my journey of self-transformation and self-discovery. And most of all, this course taught me how to unlearn this toxic behavior and how to choose happiness and positivity in the present and to stop worrying about tomorrow.
The gift of this course is that it is universally applicable to any personal and professional context. Cornerstone, learn to change the world.
In this time of great uncertainty, there's one thing you can be certain of: your education. Our wide range of online programs let you upskill yourself and earn a leading-edge qualification from the comfort of your own home. We've been educating Africa for 50 years. so we know how to adapt to our forever changing landscape. Learn to change the world and take control today. Speak to one of our student advisors. Visit cornerstone.ac.za to enroll now.